Welcome to a gentle journey through the life and legacy of one of the wizarding world's most mysterious and powerful figures, Albus Dumbledore. In this soothing video, we'll explore the quiet corners of his past, his rise through the magical ranks, and the many secrets he kept hidden behind his wise eyes and half-moon spectacles. Whether you're here to unwind, drift off to sleep, or simply immerse yourself in the deep lore of the Harry Potter universe, let the soft storytelling guide you through the remarkable tale of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. The Whispers of Early Life, Origins and Obscurity. Our journey into the quiet depths of Albus Dumbledore's story begins not with grand prophecies or epic duels, but in the humble, idyllic setting of Mold on the Wold, a quaint, wizarding village nestled in the English countryside. Born in the late summer of 1881, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore was the eldest child of Percival and Kendra Dumbledore. His father, Percival, was a kind and respectable wizard, known within his local community as an honest man, yet one whose life was destined for profound tragedy and an early, unjust end. Percival, while seemingly an ordinary wizard, held the quiet dignity of a loving father. Kendra, Albus's mother, was described as a formidable and fiercely protective woman, possessing a stern demeanor that perhaps hinted at the immense burdens she would later carry with an unyielding resolve. Her beauty was notable, but her most defining characteristic was her fierce devotion to her family, a quality that would shape their lives in unexpected ways. The Dumbledore family, while not among the most ancient or overtly influential wizarding lineages, held a quiet respect within their community. They were known for their integrity and generally kept to themselves, living a relatively peaceful existence. However, their lives were soon to be irrevocably altered by a series of events that would cast a long shadow over Albus's formative years, shaping his understanding of justice, compassion, and the dark undercurrents that could disrupt even the most serene lives. The first cracks in their peaceful existence appeared when Albus was still a young boy, perhaps only 10 years old, on the very cusp of his Hogwarts education. His younger sister, Ariana, a delicate and sensitive child, suffered a truly horrific and traumatic attack at the hands of 3 Muggle boys. They had witnessed her performing magic, a simple, childish act perhaps, but one that terrified and enraged them. In their ignorance, fear, and cruelty, they assaulted her, an act that had irreversible consequences on the fragile fabric of her being. This horrific incident left Ariana deeply scarred, both mentally and magically. Her magical abilities, once developing naturally, were shattered and became uncontrollably erratic. From that day forward, her magic manifested in unpredictable, often violent explosions whenever she was frightened or unable to contain her emotions. She became a constant danger to herself and to those around her, a heartbreaking consequence of the trauma she endured. This tragic event was the catalyst for the Dumbledore family's eventual downfall. In a fit of righteous fury and a desperate attempt to protect his daughter from any future harm, Percival Dumbledore retaliated against the Muggle boys. His actions, while deeply understandable to any parent witnessing such an injustice against their child, were tragically against the strict laws of the wizarding world that forbade the use of magic on Muggles, particularly when it resulted in severe harm. He was swiftly apprehended by the Ministry of Magic, tried, and subsequently imprisoned in Azkaban, the wizarding prison from which few ever truly recovered their sanity or freedom. Percival Dumbledore spent the remainder of his life incarcerated, slowly succumbing to the despair of Azkaban, never seeing his children again. His unjust imprisonment left Kendra to raise their 3 children alone, bearing the weight of both her husband's absence and Ariana's fragile condition. This sudden, brutal disruption to their family unit forced Kendra to make a difficult and isolating decision. She moved her family from Mold on the Wold to the more secluded village of Godric's Hollow, a place with a rich history in the wizarding world, known for its strong magical community, and as the resting place of figures like Ignotus Peveril. The move was driven by a desperate need for privacy and to protect Ariana, whose uncontrolled magic posed a constant danger and whose condition was a source of immense pain and shame for the family, particularly Kendra, who felt a profound duty to shield her daughter from a world that could not understand or accept her. She kept Ariana largely hidden from the wizarding world, an act of protection that was often misinterpreted by their neighbors as secrecy, reclusiveness, or even outright cruelty, fueling whispers and suspicion about the Dumbledore household. This isolation further intensified the pressure on the family, particularly Albus. Albus, thrust into the role of the eldest son and now essentially fatherless, carried the weight of these early tragedies. His father's unjust imprisonment, his beloved sister's broken state, and his mother's fierce, almost isolating protectiveness shaped him profoundly. While the world outside might have seen a quiet, unassuming boy, beneath the surface lay a nascent brilliance, tinged with a deep understanding of loss, injustice, and the fragile nature of happiness. He developed an early sense of responsibility, feeling the burden of his family's misfortunes acutely. This early period of his life, shrouded in the quiet grief and protective secrecy of his family, laid the groundwork for the complex, burdened, yet ultimately benevolent wizard he would become. It was a beginning marked by the whispers of sorrow and profound hardship, but also the first stirrings of a powerful, untapped potential that would soon blaze forth at Hogwarts, setting him on a path towards greatness, yet always haunted by the specter of his past. A star at Hogwarts, prodigy, and promise. When the time came for Albus Dumbledore to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, he arrived not as a blank slate, but as a boy already touched by profound experiences. The heavy weight of his family's tragedies, his father's unjust imprisonment, his mother's fierce protective isolation, and his sister Ariana's fragile, uncontrolled magic had undoubtedly shaped his early perception of the world. Yet, within the hallowed halls of the ancient castle, his inherent brilliance, largely constrained by the somber circumstances of his home life, finally found its true arena to shine. The Sorting Hat, with little hesitation and perhaps recognizing a nascent blend of intellectual courage and burgeoning ambition, placed him in Gryffindor, the house renowned for its courage, chivalry, and nerve. These were qualities Albus possessed in abundance, though perhaps not always in the traditional outward swashbuckling sense. His courage manifested more as a fierce intellectual daring, a willingness to challenge established norms, and an unwavering moral compass that, even at a young age, began to point towards justice and truth. From his very first term, Albus Dumbledore proved to be an extraordinary student, a true prodigy. His academic achievements were nothing short of legendary, quickly becoming the stuff of hushed whispers among both students and professors. He excelled in every single subject he pursued, demonstrating an unparalleled aptitude for magic that bordered on the intuitive. His understanding of complex spells and ancient runes seemed to come effortlessly to him, and he displayed a remarkable and innate flair for transfiguration, a discipline he would later master to an unrivaled degree and teach with unparalleled skill. His transformations were rumored to be so precise they bordered on genuine creation. His professors quickly recognized his exceptional, once-in-a-generation talents. They spoke of him in reverent tones, predicting a future of immense significance and influence within the wizarding world. He wasn't just good, he was uniquely brilliant, often surpassing the capabilities of students many years his senior. He mastered charms that baffled even older students, delved into the most obscure and intricate areas of magical theory, and quickly surpassed the knowledge base of many of his peers and even some of his instructors. It wasn't just raw, inherent talent, however. Dumbledore possessed an insatiable curiosity that drove him to constantly seek deeper understanding, coupled with an intense and almost obsessive dedication to learning. He wasn't content with merely understanding the curriculum. He sought to push the boundaries of magical knowledge, to unravel its deepest mysteries, to understand the fundamental forces that governed the magical world. Beyond his exceptional academic prowess, Dumbledore was also an active and celebrated member of the wider school community, though perhaps not in the most conventional ways. He wasn't a recluse or solely a bookish individual despite his intellectual leanings. He was involved in various school clubs and activities, particularly those focused on intellectual debate and magical theory, rather than Quidditch or more overtly competitive pursuits. He was known for his quick wit, his sharp intellect, and his remarkable ability to engage in profound and stimulating discussions with both his peers and his instructors. His presence in debates and intellectual contests was highly anticipated, as he invariably offered insights that were both original and profoundly insightful, often changing the very direction of the conversation. He had a natural charisma that drew people to him even then. During his 7 years at Hogwarts, Dumbledore garnered an astonishing array of accolades. He won every major award the school offered for academic excellence, his name etched repeatedly onto the plaques in the trophy room, a testament to his consistent and overwhelming success. He served with distinction as a prefect, and in his 7th and final year was appointed head boy, the highest honor a student could achieve. This appointment signified not only his unparalleled academic brilliance, but also his leadership qualities, his unwavering commitment to the school's values, and his ability to command respect among his peers. His final exams were said to have been the most brilliant in the history of Hogwarts, a testament to his unparalleled mastery of magic and magical theory, setting a benchmark that would rarely, if ever, be surpassed. These years at Hogwarts were for Albus a period of immense intellectual and personal growth and blossoming. It was a time when he could momentarily escape the deep sorrow that shadowed his family life and immerse himself in the vast, enthralling world of magic and knowledge. He forged friendships, though perhaps not as deeply or intimately as he might have wished, and his reputation as a burgeoning genius solidified, spreading far beyond the castle walls. He left Hogwarts not merely as a graduate, but as a young wizard whose potential was widely recognized as limitless, a star destined to illuminate the wizarding world in ways no one could yet fully comprehend. The promise he showed during these formative years laid the bedrock for the legendary figure he would ultimately become, brimming with untapped power and an intellect that would inexorably shape the destiny of many, though not without facing immense personal struggles and profound moral dilemmas. The shadow of tragedy, the death of Ariana, and its aftermath. Albus Dumbledore's dazzling Hogwarts career culminated in a blaze of glory, but the summer of his graduation in 1899 brought with it a profound and utterly devastating turning point, forever scarring his soul and altering the trajectory of his life. He returned to Godric's Hollow not to embark on a grand adventure or immediately claim his rightful place among the wizarding world's elite, as his boundless talents surely warranted. Instead, he was forced to assume the unwelcome mantle of family caretaker. His mother, Kendra, had tragically died just weeks before his return, a terrible accident involving Ariana's uncontrollable magic that had finally reached a fatal peak. This left Albus, at barely 18 years old, as the sole guardian of his two younger siblings. Aberforth, who was pragmatic, grounded, and harbored a growing resentment towards his brilliant, often absent-minded elder brother, and the deeply troubled Ariana, whose fragmented magic was a constant, unpredictable, and now even more so, dangerous force. Albus, brilliant and ambitious, felt utterly trapped. He yearned to travel, to explore ancient magical sites, to contribute to the grand debates and magical discoveries of his time alongside his equally gifted peer, Elphias Doge, with whom he had meticulously planned a grand tour of Europe. But duty called, and he felt honor-bound, or perhaps trapped by circumstance, to care for Ariana, a responsibility that felt like a suffocating burden on his youthful ambitions. It was into this suffocating atmosphere of fresh grief, overwhelming responsibility, and simmering fraternal resentment that Gellert Grindelwald arrived. Grindelwald, a wizard of immense natural talent and even greater, almost limitless ambition, had been expelled from Durmstrang Institute for his dark experiments, his morally ambiguous fascinations, and his twisted philosophies concerning wizarding dominance. He came to Godric's Hollow specifically to research the grave of Ignotus Peveril, searching for clues about the fabled Deathly Hallows. Albus and Gellert, two extraordinarily brilliant young wizards, found in each other a kindred spirit, an intellectual equal, and a shared dangerous vision. Their connection was immediate and intensely profound, bordering on mutual infatuation, a powerful bond forged in shared intellectual curiosity and a sense of their own exceptionalism. They spent their days enthralled in passionate discussions of ancient magic, the legendary Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak, and their increasingly radical ideology of wizarding supremacy. For the greater good. This chilling philosophy posited that wizards, being inherently superior, had a right, even a moral duty, to rule over muggles, even if it meant subjugating them and forcing them for their own benefit, a concept that twisted noble intentions into ruthless authoritarianism. Albus, blinded by Grindelwald's dazzling charisma, by the intoxicating promise of intellectual companionship, and perhaps most compellingly, by the allure of a future where he could finally escape the stifling confines of his family life and fully realize his vast potential, became deeply entangled in Grindelwald's extremist ideology. He convinced himself, through a dangerous blend of idealism and self-deception, that their plans, though seemingly ruthless and requiring significant sacrifice, were for the ultimate long-term benefit of wizard kind. They meticulously plotted their revolution, dreaming of a world where their combined, unrivaled power would usher in a new, dominant, and arguably better era for magic and magical people, free from the constraints of secrecy and Muggle interference. However, the intoxicating bubble of their shared ambition and dangerous fantasies was violently burst by Aberforth Dumbledore. Aberforth, practical, grounded, and deeply devoted to their ailing sister, was profoundly concerned about Ariana. He saw how Albus was neglecting their sister, how he was being completely swept away by Grindelwald's dangerous ideas, and how Ariana's precarious condition was being ignored and jeopardized by their reckless magical experiments. He confronted Albus and Grindelwald, accusing Albus of abandoning his core responsibilities and failing their family. The argument escalated quickly, becoming a heated, frantic, and ultimately tragic three-way duel. Spells flew wildly in the small cottage, a chaotic flurry of raw, untamed magic. Amidst the chaos and the clashing of powerful, desperate spells, Ariana Dumbledore, frightened and caught directly in the crossfire of her brothers in Grindelwald, was tragically struck down. No one, not even Albus, ever knew for certain whose spell it was that ended her life. This terrible, agonizing ambiguity became a profound source of torment that haunted Albus for the rest of his days. The immediate aftermath was devastating. Grindelwald, horrified by what had happened and perhaps fearing the consequences, vanished without a word, disappearing into the burgeoning dark currents of Europe. Albus was left alone with his dead sister, burdened by an unbearable, crushing guilt and the shattering realization of the catastrophic consequences of his own ambition and his fatal, blinding attraction to Grindelwald's dark vision. The death of Ariana marked the definitive end of Albus's innocence and the beginning of a profound, lifelong period of regret and penance. He never truly forgave himself for his part in her death, for allowing his personal ambition and his intellectual fascination with Grindelwald to overshadow his sacred duty to his family and the well-being of his sister. This tragedy became the crucible in which his character was forged, transforming him from an arrogant, ambitious, and somewhat reckless youth into the wise, often melancholic, deeply empathetic, and profoundly cautious wizard we would come to know. The shadow of Ariana's death would forever remind him of the seductive dangers of unchecked power, the devastating consequences of ruthless ambition, and the corrupting influence of a twisted, greater good ideology, shaping his entire future approach to magic, to power, and to life itself. It was the moment he truly understood the immense responsibility that came with great power and the terrifying ease with which one could lose their way. A time of reflection, Grindelwald's betrayal, and Dumbledore's guilt. The immediate aftermath of Ariana's death was a period of profound anguish and shattered dreams for Albus Dumbledore. Gellert Grindelwald, the magnetic figure who had promised a glorious future and ignited Albus's most dangerous, unrestrained ambitions, vanished without a trace, leaving Albus utterly alone with his crushing grief, the bewildered and furious Aberforth, and an unbearable weight of personal responsibility. This swift and silent departure was not merely an abandonment. It was a profound betrayal that cut Dumbledore to his very core, deeper than any physical wound. It wasn't just a betrayal of their shared ideals, which were now revealed as monstrously flawed, but a deeply personal one, shattering the intense, almost romantic bond they had forged. The alluring vision of for a greater good, once so compelling and seemingly logical, now lay in desolate ruins, tainted irrevocably by the innocent blood of his beloved sister. The gut-wrenching revelation that the person he had so admired, perhaps even loved with a youthful fervor, could be so utterly ruthless, so detached from the devastating consequences of their shared actions, profoundly affected Dumbledore. He was forced to confront the harsh, undeniable reality that his own judgment had been catastrophically clouded, his moral compass skewed by the intoxicating allure of immense power and intense intellectual companionship. This period was not one of outward grand gestures or public lament. It was a time of intense internal turmoil, a silent, agonizing war waged within his own mind and soul. He was overwhelmed by a crushing, pervasive guilt, a suffocating feeling that would cling to him like a shroud for the rest of his long life. He blamed himself unequivocally for Ariana's death, wrestling endlessly with the agonizing, unanswerable uncertainty of whose spell had definitively taken her life, and the undeniable truth that his own reckless ambition and selfish desires had directly contributed to the fatal duel. The harrowing knowledge that he had been so willing to sacrifice everything, including his family and his moral integrity, for a warped and ultimately destructive ideal, was a bitter, poisoned pill to swallow. The public perception of Ariana's death and Percival's imprisonment further exacerbated Albus's internal suffering and isolation. While the ministry's official records might have painted a more sanitized or ambiguous picture, within Godric's hollow and among the wider wizarding community, hushed whispers and thinly veiled accusations surely circulated like venom. Kendra's reclusive nature had always fueled speculation, and now, with Ariana's tragic death, the Dumbledore family was viewed with a mixture of pity, suspicion, and often thinly disguised judgment. This societal judgment, coupled with Aberforth's undeniably raw resentment and direct accusations, intensified Albus's profound isolation and compounded his already crushing self-condemnation. He was a pariah in his own family, haunted by his past actions. For a significant period following the tragedy, Albus deeply withdrew. He attended his sister's funeral, a somber and heartbreaking affair where Aberforth openly blamed him, even physically striking him in a raw outburst of grief and anger. This public display of his brother's raw sorrow and fury served as a searing, painful reminder of his culpability and the irreversible damage he had wrought. Following this, Dumbledore likely spent a considerable amount of time in self-imposed seclusion, deeply reflecting on the catastrophic missteps, the fatal flaws in his character, and the reckless ambition that had led to such unspeakable tragedy. He delved deeply into intense self-analysis, dissecting his own motivations, his inherent ambitions, and his profound weaknesses with an unflinching honesty. This period of intense introspection was absolutely crucial for his future development and the shaping of his character. It was during these dark, desolate days that he truly grappled with the profound dangers of unregulated power and the corrupting, insidious nature of certain ideologies when they become unmoored from empathy and genuine compassion. He understood, perhaps for the very first time, the true, weighty meaning of responsibility and the devastating, widespread consequences when personal ambition overrides moral obligation and familial duty. This was not a time of immediate recovery, but of slow, agonizing reckoning and profound transformation. Dumbledore emerged from this period irrevocably changed, deeply humbled, and imbued with a deep, abiding caution regarding his own formidable abilities and the subtle temptations they presented. He recognized the insidious, seductive pull of power, how easily it could warp even the noblest intentions and twist them into something monstrous. This traumatic experience served as his greatest teacher, a harsh but invaluable lesson that instilled in him a lifelong commitment to fighting dark magic, not just externally in the world, but also, crucially, within himself. His internal struggle against his past errors, his innate arrogance, and the lingering temptation of power would become a defining characteristic, shaping every major decision he would make in the decades to come. The betrayal of Grindelwald and the overwhelming burden of guilt laid the foundation for the wise, careful, and profoundly empathetic wizard who would later become a beacon of hope and a bulwark against future darkness, forever carrying the invisible scars of his youth. The rise of a legend, early teaching career, and transfiguration following the shattering tragedy of Ariana's death and his profound period of self-recrimination, a time when he grappled with his deepest guilt and the catastrophic consequences of his ambition, Albus Dumbledore gradually found his way back to the familiar, comforting embrace of Hogwarts. He returned not as a student, but as a member of the teaching staff, beginning his esteemed career as the Transfiguration professor. This was not a move driven by immediate outward ambition or a thirst for accolades, but perhaps by a deeper desire for purpose, a desperate need to channel his formidable intellect for good, and to immerse himself in the structured, intellectually stimulating environment of the school where he had once thrived as a student. The castle offered a sense of stability and a defined purpose after the chaos of his personal life. Dumbledore's return to Hogwarts marked the subtle but undeniable beginning of his ascent from a promising but deeply troubled young wizard to a revered and legendary figure within the wizarding world. As a professor, he quickly distinguished himself, not just by his profound and unparalleled knowledge of transfiguration, the complex and intricate art of changing one object into another, often considered one of the most challenging branches of magic, but by his truly innovative and deeply engaging teaching style. He was far from a dry, monotonous textbook lecturer. Instead, he approached his subject with a playful brilliance, an infectious enthusiasm, and a profound respect for the magic itself that captivated his students from the very first lesson. He had an uncanny knack for making even the most intricate and seemingly arcane concepts appear understandable, often employing humorous anecdotes, thought-provoking questions, or intriguing, spontaneous demonstrations to illustrate his points with memorable flair. His lessons were always stimulating, intellectually challenging, and encouraged genuine critical thinking, consistently pushing his students to explore the very boundaries of their magical abilities and understanding. His classroom was renowned as a place of vibrant intellectual activity, where students felt both rigorously challenged and deeply supported. He instilled in them a deep respect for magic and, crucially, a strong emphasis on its ethical application. He could effortlessly transform a grand desk into a squealing pig or a simple matchstick into a glittering needle with breathtaking ease, but it was his ability to explain the underlying theory with such crystalline clarity and profound insight that truly set him apart as an educator. Students often spoke for years afterward of how he made the complex seem simple and the seemingly impossible seem merely a matter of diligent practice and deeper understanding. He encouraged experimentation and fostered a love of learning that went far beyond mere rote memorization. Beyond his exceptional teaching abilities, Dumbledore's personal qualities also began to emerge more fully during this long period, endearing him profoundly to both students and colleagues alike. He possessed a keen and often unexpected sense of humor, frequently expressed through his famous witty remarks, charmingly mischievous twinkling in his eyes, and an ability to diffuse tension with a well-placed observation. His deep and burgeoning wisdom was evident in his advice, not just on the intricacies of Transfiguration, but on life itself, on moral dilemmas, and on the delicate balance of power and responsibility. He showed genuine care for his students, demonstrating an impressive memory for their names, their individual struggles, their burgeoning talents, and their ultimate potential. He was approachable, yet simultaneously commanded immense, almost effortless respect, a rare and powerful combination that quickly cemented his popularity and authority within the school community. Over the several decades of his teaching tenure, Dumbledore steadily became a legend in his own right, his reputation growing exponentially long before he ever assumed the ultimate mantle of Headmaster. Students who passed through his classroom often spoke of his lessons for years afterward, remembering his profound insights, his unconventional methods, and the sheer joy he seemed to take in teaching. His reputation grew steadily, not just within the protected walls of the school, but across the wider wizarding community, extending even to international circles. He became known not only as a brilliant Transfiguration expert, but also as a wizard of immense, almost unfathomable power and intellect, whose counsel was increasingly sought after by the Ministry of Magic and other prominent figures in the magical world. His time as a professor allowed him to fully hone his already extraordinary magical abilities and deepen his understanding of a vast array of various magical disciplines. While specializing in Transfiguration, he rigorously continued his self-study of advanced dark arts theory, to understand, not to practice, ancient runes, obscure magical lore, and the intricate, often opaque workings of the wider wizarding world. This period was crucial for him to regain his confidence, not in his raw power, which he always possessed, but in his ability to wield it responsibly, ethically, and for the greater good, a lesson hard won from his past. It was during these years that he truly began to lay the groundwork for his eventual leadership, building an unshakable foundation of trust, admiration, and respect among generations of witches and wizards, quietly but surely preparing him for the immense responsibilities that would inevitably follow as the looming shadows of a new, even greater darkness began to gather on the horizon. He steadily rose through the ranks of the Hogwarts faculty, steadily, surely, and with an almost fated inevitability, moving towards the revered position he was always destined to hold. The looming darkness, Grindelwald's ascent, and the reluctant champion. While Albus Dumbledore was steadily building his reputation as a brilliant and beloved professor at Hogwarts, fostering a new generation of wizards and witches, an ominous storm was brewing relentlessly across Europe. Gellert Grindelwald, the enigmatic figure who had vanished so abruptly and tragically after Ariana's death, had not faded into obscurity or retired from his dark ambitions. Instead, he had been systematically consolidating his power, gathering a fervent following, and propagating his insidious ideology of wizarding supremacy with alarming speed and success. His twisted vision of for the greater good, once a private, dangerously seductive intellectual pursuit shared between him and a young Dumbledore, had now metastasized into a full-blown, violent, and highly organized crusade that threatened to engulf the entire wizarding world. Grindelwald's rise to power was marked by ruthless efficiency, chilling charisma, and unparalleled manipulative genius. He openly rejected the established international statute of secrecy, believing firmly that wizards should openly dominate muggles, asserting their natural superiority and forcibly ruling over them for their own benefit. He relentlessly sought out the fabled Deathly Hallows, particularly the Elder Wand, believing its immense power was essential to cement his tyrannical reign and achieve his ultimate goals. His influence spread like wildfire across magical communities, attracting disillusioned wizards and witches who believed in his radical, often appealing vision of a world where magic reigned supreme. He orchestrated increasingly bolder and more brutal acts of terror, undermining the established international wizarding authorities and plunging the European wizarding world into a period of unprecedented fear, instability, and open conflict. His name became synonymous with dread, whispered in hushed, terrified tones across continents as his power grew unchecked. Throughout this period, Dumbledore was acutely aware of Grindelwald's growing threat. News of Grindelwald's atrocities would surely have reached the protected walls of Hogwarts, permeating the daily lives of the staff and older students. He would have read the grim reports in the Daily Prophet, seen the fear and despair in the eyes of his colleagues and the general public, and felt the chilling, personal echo of his own youthful ambitions in Grindelwald's escalating reign of terror. The world cried out desperately for a champion, for someone powerful enough and with the moral fortitude to confront this burgeoning Dark Lord, and everyone knew deep down, with a terrible sense of inevitability, that only one wizard possessed the singular power and the unique, complicated connection to Grindelwald to stand a genuine chance: Albus Dumbledore. Yet Dumbledore remained profoundly reluctant. His hesitation was not born of fear of Grindelwald's immense power or a lack of courage. It stemmed from something far deeper, more personal, and far more agonizing. The searing memory of Ariana's death, the unresolved, tormenting question of whose spell had tragically killed her, and the profound, crushing guilt he carried were heavy, invisible chains binding him, preventing him from acting. He knew with a terrifying and absolute certainty that facing Grindelwald meant confronting his own most painful past, reopening old, festering wounds, and risking the horrifying possibility that he might once again be responsible for a loved one's death, or, perhaps even worse, that he might succumb to the very same temptations and dark philosophies that had once led him astray. He was deeply afraid of the inherent, dangerous power dynamic that still existed between them, the fatal weakness he harbored for Grindelwald, a lingering echo of their intense bond, and the paralyzing fear that he might, in the heat of a brutal battle, lose control and repeat the catastrophic mistakes of his youth. The international wizarding community implored him, pleaded with him, and eventually, with increasing desperation, demanded that he act. High-ranking officials from the Ministry of Magic and the International Confederation of Wizards certainly visited Hogwarts, personally urged him to intervene and take up the mantle of leadership against Grindelwald. They saw him as the last, best hope, the wizard who had been prophesied to be greater than Grindelwald, the one who held the key to his ultimate defeat. Dumbledore, however, continued to resist for as long as he possibly could, offering various, often flimsy excuses, perhaps claiming he was indispensable at Hogwarts, or that the time was not yet strategically right for such a confrontation. His inner turmoil was immense. He was torn agonizingly between his profound duty to the wider wizarding world and his debilitating personal anguish, between the desperate growing need to stop a rising catastrophic darkness and the paralyzing, deeply personal fear of confronting his own deepest regret and the man who embodied it. His reluctance was not a sign of weakness. It was, paradoxically, a profound testament to his newfound self-awareness and his unwavering determination to never again allow personal ambition or dangerous emotional entanglement to overshadow his moral obligations and responsibilities. He waited, he observed, and perhaps he even prayed for another solution, another champion, to emerge who could bear the burden. But as Grindelwald's power grew unchecked, his atrocities escalating, and the suffering across Europe intensified, it became increasingly, tragically clear that the immense burden of confronting the Dark Wizard would inevitably and solely fall to him. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would not only determine the fate of the entire wizarding world, but also serve as Dumbledore's ultimate, deeply personal reckoning with his past, his conscience, and the choices that had shaped him. The duel that shook the world, the showdown with Grindelwald. The year 1945 stood as a pivotal, watershed moment in wizarding history, marked by the culmination of Gellert Grindelwald's relentless campaign of terror and Albus Dumbledore's long-anticipated and finally unavoidable confrontation with his former friend. The pressure on Dumbledore had become unbearable, reaching a critical mass. Grindelwald's atrocities had reached a horrifying peak, plunging the wizarding world into a state of all-out global conflict, now famously known as the Global Wizarding War. His dark influence extended menacingly across continents, leaving countless lives lost, ancient magical communities shattered by fear and violence, and the very fabric of wizarding society teetering on the brink of collapse. The International Confederation of Wizards, along with individual ministries of magic from around the globe, made repeated, desperate, and increasingly urgent pleas for Dumbledore to intervene, recognizing him, with a grim certainty, as the only wizard truly capable of matching Grindelwald's formidable destructive power. After decades of agonizing hesitation, fueled by his profound guilt over Ariana's death and his deep-seated fear of facing the man he had once loved with such consuming intensity, Dumbledore finally accepted his destined and ultimately unavoidable responsibility. Perhaps the sheer scale of the global suffering, the crushing weight of public expectation, or the chilling realization that no one else could possibly succeed, finally compelled him to act. The agreed-upon or determined location of their legendary showdown was Nurmengard, the imposing, chilling fortress Grindelwald had built to imprison his enemies and cement his tyrannical reign across Europe. This wasn't merely a magical battle. It was a climactic clash of conflicting ideologies, a profound confrontation between two titans of magic who had once stood side by side, united by a dangerous, shared vision, now diametrically opposed. The duel itself was, by all accounts, legendary in its unparalleled scope, its raw power, and its breathtaking intensity. It was not a quick skirmish or a fleeting exchange of curses, but a protracted, magnificent display of magical prowess that reverberated through the very fabric of the magical world, sending shock waves far beyond the physical location. No two wizards of such immense raw power and intellectual cunning had ever clashed before, or would again for many generations. Dumbledore, wielding his own reliable wand, faced Grindelwald, who possessed the Elder Wand, one of the fabled Deathly Hallows, and widely recognized as the most powerful wand in existence, having claimed it from its previous owner, Michael Grigorovich. Witnesses, if any could have survived the immediate vicinity of such a fearsome display, would have seen an explosion of raw, untamed magic, spells of unimaginable complexity and destructive force, magical shields that shimmered and fractured with visible strain, and transfigurations that altered the very landscape around them in instantaneous, dramatic ways. Every movement, every whispered incantation, every parry and thrust of magic was executed with a precision, power, and speed that bordered on the divine, a dance of death between two masters. This wasn't just a battle of spells, it was a deeply personal duel of wills, intellects, and conflicting convictions, laden with the weight of their shared past. Dumbledore had to contend not only with Grindelwald's immense, ruthless magical ability, but also with his deep, intimate understanding of Dumbledore's own strengths and weaknesses, their intertwined shared history, and the complex emotional ties that still lingered between them, however painfully and tragically. In the end, despite Grindelwald's formidable power and his possession of the legendary Elder Wand, Dumbledore emerged victorious. His triumph was a profound testament not only to his superior magical skill and adaptability, but also, and more importantly, to his profound moral strength, his strategic brilliance, and his deeper understanding of true power, which transcended mere brute force or dark ambition. Dumbledore defeated Grindelwald not merely by overwhelming him with raw force, but by outmaneuvering him intellectually, outthinking him strategically, and ultimately by demonstrating a deeper connection to magic that valued love and sacrifice over dominance and cruelty. The Elder Wand, that sentient and fickle instrument of power, recognizing a new master who had definitively conquered its previous owner in fair combat, irrevocably changed its allegiance. It transferred its loyalty from Grindelwald to Dumbledore, making him its rightful possessor, a fact Dumbledore would keep largely secret for decades, understanding the immense dangers its ownership entailed. The defeat of Gellert Grindelwald brought an end to the brutal global wizarding war, liberating countless communities from tyranny and restoring a fragile, deeply longed-for peace to the world. Dumbledore's victory was celebrated universally, cementing his status as the greatest wizard of his age, a singular beacon of light and hope in a world that had been plunged into the deepest, darkest despair. Yet, for Dumbledore, the monumental victory was tinged with profound, abiding melancholy. He had finally confronted his deepest fear and triumphed, but at a terrible, incalculable personal cost. He had defeated the man he had once loved, whose potential had once seemed limitless. And though the world rejoiced in his heroism, he carried the silent, heavy burden of a broken friendship, a lost love, and the indelible, haunting memory of his sister's tragic death, a constant, painful reminder of the agonizing choices and profound sacrifices that had led him to this monumental moment. The Helm of Hogwarts, Dumbledore's Headmastership and Golden Era. Following his monumental and globally celebrated victory over Gellert Grindelwald in 1945, Albus Dumbledore's renown soared to unprecedented, almost mythical heights. He was universally hailed as the savior of the wizarding world, unequivocally recognized as the greatest wizard of his age, and a figure of immense moral authority whose very presence inspired hope. It was only a matter of time before he would assume the ultimate leadership role within the British wizarding community. Sometime around 1956, after decades of distinguished exemplary service as a beloved Transfiguration professor, Albus Dumbledore was formally appointed Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. This prestigious appointment marked the official beginning of what many would come to see as a truly golden era for the ancient and revered institution, a period characterized by stability, intellectual flourishing, and a pervasive sense of safety. Under Dumbledore's visionary leadership, Hogwarts didn't just survive, it flourished spectacularly. He brought with him not only his unparalleled magical talent and boundless intellect, but also his deep, empathetic wisdom, his profound understanding of human nature, and his distinct, often whimsical, and ultimately deeply benevolent personality. He transformed the school into a vibrant haven of learning, innovation, and relative peace, fostering an environment where students could truly thrive both academically and personally, encouraged to explore their fullest potential. He was known for his remarkably progressive approach to education, actively encouraging independent thought, celebrating the rich diversity of his students, and valuing kindness, integrity, and courage above all else. He believed deeply in nurturing the individual spirit within each student, recognizing that true magic lay not just in spells, but in the character one built. Dumbledore's eccentricities became legendary during his long and storied headmastership, adding to his mystique and making him an unforgettable figure, he had a distinct penchant for garishly colored robes, often adorned with whimsical celestial patterns, sparkling moons, or intricate, esoteric embroidery. A stark contrast to the somber attire of many other wizards, he also had a famous, almost childlike fondness for peculiar Muggle sweets, frequently offering sherbet lemons or fizzin' whizbees to anyone who visited his office. His office itself, a circular room at the very top of a winding staircase behind a gargoyle, was a repository of fascinating magical artifacts, ancient tomes that seemed to hum with forgotten knowledge, and curious instruments that whirred, puffed, and emitted strange wisps of smoke, reflecting his boundless curiosity. He kept a majestic, loyal phoenix, Fawkes, as his familiar, whose mournful, healing song was a source of comfort in times of sorrow, and whose fiery rebirth was a powerful symbol of hope and enduring life. These delightful quirks, far from diminishing his immense authority or wisdom, only added to his enigmatic aura and endeared him further to the generations of students who passed through Hogwarts. His leadership was characterized by a profound and unwavering belief in the transformative power of education and the paramount importance of instilling strong moral values in his students. He treated every student as a unique individual, often demonstrating an uncanny ability to see beyond their surface behavior to their true potential, their hidden struggles, or their nascent virtues. He was a firm disciplinarian when necessary, capable of delivering sharp, piercing rebukes, but he was always profoundly fair, and his punishments often carried a deeper lesson rather than merely a penalty, designed to foster growth and self-awareness. He fostered a deep sense of community, mutual respect, and profound safety within the ancient castle walls, making Hogwarts a true second home for countless generations of young witches and wizards. Under his unparalleled guidance, Hogwarts maintained its reputation as the premier wizarding school in the entire world. He oversaw numerous advancements in magical theory and practical application, actively encouraged groundbreaking research in various magical disciplines, and maintained excellent, often strategic, relations with the Ministry of Magic and other international magical institutions, frequently acting as a crucial bridge between various often squabbling factions. He carefully appointed a highly talented and dedicated staff of professors, fostering a collegial, intellectually stimulating, and supportive environment among the faculty. Dumbledore's headmastership also broadly coincided with a period of relative calm and reconstruction in the wider wizarding world following Grindelwald's defeat. This allowed him to dedicate his immense intellect, boundless energy, and profound wisdom primarily to the betterment and advancement of the school. He created an atmosphere of security, stability, and quiet joy, largely shielding the students from much of the lingering fear and helping to rebuild trust and optimism in the magical world. His very presence seemed to radiate calm assurance, a quiet strength that settled any anxieties. However, even during this ostensibly peaceful and flourishing golden era, Dumbledore remained incredibly vigilant. His personal scarring experiences had taught him irrevocably that darkness could always lurk beneath the surface of tranquility, and that peace was a fragile, fleeting thing that required constant protection. He never forgot the harsh lessons learned from his entanglement with Grindelwald, and he kept a watchful, discerning eye on any nascent signs of prejudice, ambition gone awry, or the stirrings of a new insidious darkness. Unbeknownst to many, even during these ostensibly peaceful years, the insidious seeds of a new, even more terrifying darkness were slowly beginning to sprout in the form of a young, gifted, yet chillingly ambitious orphan. This emerging darkness, embodied by Tom Riddle, was one he would soon dedicate the rest of his life to confronting, and which would ultimately define the latter half of his extraordinary, legendary tenure as Headmaster. The First Shadow, Voldemort's Origins, and Dumbledore's Early Suspicion. Even amidst the flourishing golden era of Dumbledore's headmastership, a period of remarkable peace and intellectual growth at Hogwarts, a new and far more insidious shadow began to stretch across the wizarding world. This profound darkness did not arrive with a grand public challenge or a dramatic overt declaration of war, but quietly, subtly, and chillingly, in the form of a brilliant, charismatic, yet deeply disturbed young orphan named Tom Marvolo Riddle. Dumbledore's initial encounter with Tom Riddle was not within the hallowed halls of Hogwarts, but in a dreary, impersonal Muggle orphanage, the place where Tom had spent his formative, loveless years. Dumbledore took the unusual, highly personal step of going to deliver the invitation to the 11-year-old boy himself, a testament to his immediate, unsettling suspicions and deep curiosity about the boy's unusual nature and origins. Upon meeting Tom, Dumbledore immediately sensed something profoundly wrong, something inherently cold and calculating. Tom displayed an unnerving coldness, a complete and utter lack of empathy, and an almost predatory control over the other, more vulnerable orphans. He openly admitted to using his nascent, powerful magical abilities to torment and frighten others, collecting gruesome trophies from his victims, revealing a cruel, sadistic streak and an overwhelming, chilling desire for absolute dominance and control. Dumbledore, with his keen, almost preternatural insight into human nature and his profound understanding of the seductive allure of power, a lesson he had learned so painfully with Grindelwald, recognized the alarming, unmistakable signs of a future dark wizard even in this seemingly polite, unassuming child. He saw in Tom a chilling reflection of the unbridled ambition and hunger for power he had witnessed and nearly succumbed to with Grindelwald, but terrifyingly, without any discernible capacity for love, remorse, or genuine human connection. Despite his deep and burgeoning misgivings, Dumbledore brought Tom to Hogwarts. He believed, perhaps initially with a touch of his characteristic enduring optimism, that the structured environment, the inclusive community, and the moral guidance provided by the school could temper Tom's darker impulses. He recognized the extraordinary, almost unparalleled magical talent simmering within Tom, a raw power that truly rivaled his own, and genuinely hoped that this immense potential could be channeled for good, for the betterment of the wizarding world. However, Dumbledore never truly trusted Tom Riddle. He watched him with an unwavering analytical gaze throughout Tom's schooling, meticulously discerning the manipulative charm he wielded effortlessly over others, and the profound, impenetrable secrecy he maintained about his true self and his dark activities. During Tom's years at Hogwarts, Dumbledore, then a Transfiguration professor, continued to observe him closely and discreetly. He noted Tom's undeniable brilliance in academics, his seemingly effortless popularity among his Slytherin peers, and his uncanny ability to uncover forbidden magical secrets and delve into the darkest corners of magical history. Dumbledore was almost certainly the only staff member who seemed to consistently see through Tom's carefully constructed facade of respectability and charm, perceiving the chilling truth beneath. He noticed the distinct lack of genuine friendship, the calculated nature of Tom's every action, and the chilling, boundless ambition that simmered relentlessly beneath his composed, handsome exterior. One of Dumbledore's earliest and most significant direct interventions occurred when Tom Riddle opened a Chamber of Secrets during his 5th year, unleashing the monstrous basilisk and causing the tragic death of a student moaning Myrtle, along with the petrification of several others, while the Ministry of Magic and the Headmaster at the time, Armando Dippet, were cunningly convinced by Tom's manipulation that the innocent Rubeus Hagrid was responsible. Dumbledore remained deeply skeptical and instinctively distrustful of Tom's narrative. He could not definitively prove Tom's guilt at the time, lacking concrete evidence, but his intuition screamed that Riddle was the true culprit. He watched with a growing sense of dread as Tom cunningly framed Hagrid, displaying a chilling capability for cold-blooded deception and ruthless self-preservation. This horrific incident solidified Dumbledore's conviction that Tom Riddle was undeniably destined for a profoundly dark, destructive path. Years later, when Tom Riddle, now styling himself with the terrifying moniker of Lord Voldemort, applied for the highly coveted Defense Against the Dark Arts position at Hogwarts, Dumbledore, by then the venerable Headmaster, flatly and decisively refused him. This rejection was not just professional, it was a profound act of defiance and a direct, strategic challenge to Voldemort's burgeoning power and influence. Dumbledore knew with absolute certainty that allowing Voldemort back into Hogwarts, the very heart of the British wizarding world, would be akin to inviting a deadly viper into the sacred nest. He recognized Voldemort's growing strength, his insidious influence, and the terrifying trajectory of his power, but also sensed his deeper, far more terrifying ambition to achieve absolute, unnatural immortality through the darkest, most unspeakable of magic, the creation of Horcruxes. This early period of profound suspicion and quiet, yet unyielding confrontation, laid the crucial groundwork for the epic, defining struggle that would consume and define Dumbledore's later life. He understood Voldemort's true malevolent nature long before anyone else, recognizing the subtle yet unmistakable signs of an unparalleled evil. His crucial decision to refuse Voldemort a teaching position and his unwavering, relentless vigilance marked the very first subtle skirmishes in the long and brutal war that would eventually engulf the wizarding world, a war against the Dark Lord he had first encountered as a chillingly polite, yet utterly soulless boy. Dumbledore's foresight in this period would prove to be one of his most invaluable assets in the coming conflict. The First War, Dumbledore's army, and the fight against Voldemort. As Lord Voldemort's power escalated ominously throughout the 1970s, plunging the wizarding world into a period of unprecedented fear, widespread terror, and pervasive chaos, Albus Dumbledore once again stepped forward as the only figure truly capable of standing as a bulwark against the rising, suffocating darkness. This era of widespread conflict became tragically known as the First Wizarding War, a brutal, insidious conflict fought not just on open battlefields, but on multiple fronts, often in the deep shadows, where trust was a dangerous luxury and betrayal a constant chilling threat. Dumbledore, now firmly established as the revered headmaster of Hogwarts, became the undisputed central figure of resistance against Voldemort's terrifying reign of terror and his Death Eaters. Recognizing that the Ministry of Magic, riddled with corruption, internal power struggles, and paralyzed by overwhelming fear and denial, was either unwilling or utterly unable to effectively counter Voldemort's rapidly growing influence and violent tactics, Dumbledore took decisive matters into his own hands. He secretly and resolutely reformed the Order of the Phoenix, a clandestine organization dedicated solely to fighting Voldemort and his fanatical Death Eaters. This original order comprised a diverse yet united group of extraordinarily courageous witches and wizards who were fiercely loyal to Dumbledore, bound by their shared bravery, their unwavering belief in the fight for justice, and their commitment to freedom. Members included seasoned Aurors, talented Hogwarts professors, powerful magical creatures, and ordinary citizens willing to risk everything they had, including their lives, for the cause. They operated largely in the deepest secret, gathering vital intelligence, protecting vulnerable Muggles and Muggle-borns who were Voldemort's primary targets, and directly engaging with Death Eaters in skirmishes and battles that largely went unseen and unreported by the wider, terrified public. Dumbledore served as the undisputed strategic leader of the Order. His strategies were often unconventional, relying heavily on intelligence gathering, subtle psychological warfare, and often requiring profound personal sacrifice from his loyal members. He understood Voldemort's chilling methods, his twisted motivations, and his core fears better than anyone, having observed Tom Riddle from his earliest childhood. This unparalleled insight allowed him to anticipate Voldemort's insidious moves, to devise clever counter-strategies, and to identify crucial weaknesses in the Dark Lord's grand, terrifying plan for domination. He sent Order members on perilous, often life-threatening missions, some of which, tragically, ended in death or severe injury. Yet his members trusted him implicitly, knowing he would never ask them to do something he wouldn't do himself, and that every difficult decision was made for the greater, overriding good of ultimately defeating Voldemort. Throughout the grinding war, Dumbledore himself remained a formidable, almost insurmountable deterrent to Voldemort. Though they rarely engaged in direct, prolonged duels, a testament to Voldemort's own deep-seated fear of Dumbledore, the mere fact of Dumbledore's continued existence, his immense unmatched power, and his unyielding principled opposition served as a significant, frustrating obstacle to Voldemort's complete domination of the wizarding world. Voldemort, despite his immense dark power, was deeply, genuinely afraid of Dumbledore. He consistently avoided a direct fatal confrontation, a clear testament to Dumbledore's legendary magical prowess, his profound wisdom, and his unique, almost intuitive mastery over the Elder Wand, which Voldemort coveted above all else. Voldemort feared Dumbledore's strategic mind, his ability to see through deception and illusions, and his powerful protective magic, especially the magic of love, which Voldemort himself could not comprehend. The war itself was characterized by widespread fear, unexplained disappearances, brutal torture, and indiscriminate murders. Families were torn apart by ideological divides, and the very fabric of wizarding society seemed to unravel under the relentless pressure of terror. Dumbledore's order, though often outmatched in sheer numbers and operating with far fewer resources than Voldemort's growing army, became a singular symbol of hope, courage, and defiance against the oppressive darkness. They were the unsung heroes of the underground resistance, the valiant few who kept the flame of freedom and justice alive when all seemed lost. Dumbledore also played a crucial, albeit often subtle, role in advising the ministry when he could, gently guiding them and influencing their decisions, even when they were reluctant to fully acknowledge the horrifying extent of the threat they faced. The First Wizarding War culminated in Voldemort's first defeat, a direct consequence of his misguided attempt to murder the infant Harry Potter, a boy Dumbledore would later take under his wing and mentor with profound care. The prophecy surrounding Harry and Dumbledore's subsequent actions to protect the child, placing him with the Dursleys under the protection of ancient blood magic, were absolutely pivotal in this outcome. The war left deep, painful scars across the wizarding world, but Dumbledore's unparalleled leadership, his unwavering commitment, and the profound sacrifices of the Order of the Phoenix ultimately ensured Voldemort's temporary demise. It was a brutal, costly conflict, but Dumbledore's strategic resolve and brilliant foresight laid the essential groundwork for the eventual ultimate victory, albeit one that would require another, even greater, struggle in the years to come, a struggle for which Harry Potter would be the central figure. The burden of secrets, prophecies, horcruxes, and unveiled knowledge. Following Lord Voldemort's first defeat on that fateful Halloween night in 1981, the wizarding world collectively breathed a profound, almost euphoric sigh of relief, largely unaware of the true terrifying extent of Dumbledore's strategic genius and the deeply unsettling secrets he had painstakingly begun to unravel about the Dark Lord's seemingly miraculous survival, while most others in the magical community, including the Ministry of Magic, firmly believed Voldemort was truly gone forever, utterly vanquished by the infant Harry Potter. Dumbledore, with his unmatched insight into the darkest branches of magic and his prior chilling observations of Tom Riddle from childhood, suspected the unthinkable. Voldemort had created Horcruxes. This horrific realization was not sudden. It was a gradual, painstaking process built on years of meticulous study of Voldemort's past and an intuitive understanding of his insatiable hunger for immortality. Dumbledore had noted Tom Riddle's chilling fascination with immortality, his callous, almost pathological disregard for human life, and his obsessive desire to be unique, powerful, and untouchable. The terrifying incident of the Chamber of Secrets during Tom's school years, the crucial memory acquired from Horace Slughorn revealing Voldemort's queries about Horcruxes, and Voldemort's ominous return to Hogwarts years later specifically to hide Ravenclaw's diadem all contributed incrementally to Dumbledore's growing horrifying conviction. He was the first, and for a long time, the only wizard to fully comprehend the utter horror and profound implications of Voldemort's fragmented, mutilated soul. The knowledge of Horcruxes placed an immense, suffocating burden on Dumbledore, a secret so dark, so dangerous, and so potentially devastating to the wizarding world that he had to guard it meticulously, revealing it only when absolutely necessary, and then only in carefully measured pieces. Concurrently, Dumbledore was also privy to the startling prophecy made by the eccentric Sybil Trelawney, which cryptically foretold the birth of a child with the power to defeat the Dark Lord. It was a vague yet undeniably significant prediction that spoke of a child born at the end of July, whose parents had thrice defied Voldemort. This prophecy pinpointed two potential candidates, the brave Neville Longbottom and the fated Harry Potter. When Voldemort, in his arrogance and fear, chose to target the Potters, inadvertently marking Harry as his equal by leaving him with a lightning bolt scar, Dumbledore understood the immense, terrifying implications. This knowledge meant that Harry was unequivocally destined to face Voldemort in a final confrontation, and that Dumbledore's crucial, agonizing role would be to prepare him, to guide him, and ultimately to empower him to fulfill that harrowing destiny. This was a heavy, terrible secret to carry, knowing that the young boy, whom he had brought to the Dursleys' doorstep, was marked for a confrontation he could not escape, a sacrifice he might have to make. Dumbledore's profound understanding of these two crucial elements, the existence of Horcruxes and the details of the prophecy, formed the unbreakable bedrock of his long-term, intricate strategy against Voldemort. He knew, with absolute certainty, that Voldemort could not be truly defeated, could not die as long as his soul fragments existed anchored to the mortal realm. His mission, therefore, became twofold and intertwined, to meticulously uncover and destroy all of Voldemort's hidden Horcruxes, and concurrently to ensure Harry Potter's survival, growth, and eventual victory, equipping him with the knowledge and strength for the final confrontation. This meant making incredibly difficult, often morally ambiguous, and agonizing choices. He had to keep Harry safe, yet simultaneously expose him to controlled dangers and trials that would forge his resilience and courage, preparing him for the inevitable. He had to lead the fight against Voldemort publicly, while also carefully manipulating events behind the scenes, ensuring that his grand, audacious plan would come to its ultimate fruition, even if it meant sacrificing himself. He meticulously researched Voldemort's past, delving into dark magic texts and seeking out fragmented memories and elusive clues that could reveal the hidden locations of the Horcruxes. This arduous quest took him to various individuals, like the vain and memory-obsessed Horace Slughorn, whom he skillfully manipulated to retrieve vital information about Riddle's darker fascinations. He even embarked on incredibly dangerous expeditions himself, such as the one to retrieve the ring Horcrux, Marvola Gaunt's ring, which ultimately activated a powerful curse that fatally withered his hand and began slowly consuming his life force. Every piece of unveiled knowledge, no matter how horrifying, brought him closer to understanding the full, terrifying scope of Voldemort's evil and the immense, almost insurmountable challenge ahead. The immense burden of these secrets was almost unbearable. Dumbledore could not share the full truth with many, as the knowledge of Horcruxes was too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. Potentially, inspiring other dark wizards, and the prophecy could invite unwanted attention or despair, paralyzing those who heard it. He bore the overwhelming weight of this knowledge largely alone, knowing that the ultimate victory against the greatest dark wizard of all time depended entirely on his intricate long-term plan, a plan that would ultimately require his own profound sacrifice. He became a strategist of unparalleled cunning and foresight, always several steps ahead of Voldemort, meticulously laying the groundwork for a future he knew he might not live to see, but which he was absolutely determined to secure for the wizarding world. His secrecy, though often perceived as aloofness, was a necessary shield for the immense responsibilities he carried. The Guiding Hand, Mentoring, Harry Potter, and the Greater Good. Albus Dumbledore's life, especially in its later, most crucial years, became inextricably linked with Harry Potter, the boy who lived, a connection forged in tragedy and destined for an epic confrontation. From the very moment he left baby Harry on the Dursleys' doorstep on that fateful night, shielded by the ancient powerful magic of his mother's sacrifice and the protection of blood ties, Dumbledore knowingly took on the profound and burdensome role of Harry's primary mentor and guardian. He was the guiding hand, preparing Harry for a destiny that Dumbledore himself, through his understanding of the prophecy and his previous actions, had helped to subtly shape and direct. This complex, often veiled relationship was absolutely central to Dumbledore's overarching long-term plan to finally defeat Lord Voldemort. Dumbledore orchestrated Harry's upbringing with meticulous care, despite the seemingly harsh conditions at the Dursleys. He ensured Harry was raised in an environment free from the immediate, direct dangers of the wizarding world, shielded from the fame and expectations that would otherwise overwhelm him. Yet, paradoxically, it was also an environment that, in its very oppressiveness, fostered his humility, resilience, and a deep, innate sense of compassion. Dumbledore knew that Harry's most potent protection lay in the enduring, powerful magic of his mother's love, a protection that only the unbreakable bond of blood ties could maintain as long as Harry called the Dursleys' house home. Placing Harry with the Dursleys, though it appeared cruel and neglectful to many, was a profoundly calculated strategic move to ensure his absolute safety from Voldemort and his remaining followers, a safety that lasted precisely as long as he resided at Privet Drive. Throughout Harry's years at Hogwarts, Dumbledore acted as a subtle yet ever-present guiding force. He rarely intervened directly in Harry's daily life or his smaller dilemmas, preferring to allow Harry to discover things for himself and learn from his own experiences. However, he consistently provided crucial assistance, timely warnings, and pivotal pieces of information at precisely the right moments, often through indirect means or by posing cryptic questions that forced Harry to think. He gave Harry the invisibility cloak, a cherished family heirloom, at Christmas, understanding its immense utility in navigating the castle's secrets and dangers. He ensured Harry received the Philosopher's Stone, setting up the elaborate trials that only a selfless person with true courage could pass, testing Harry's character rather than just his magical ability. He patiently and painstakingly taught Harry about Horcruxes and helped him delve into Voldemort's terrifying past through the pensive, meticulously revealing the Dark Lord's fragmented soul and the arduous, terrifying path to his ultimate destruction. Dumbledore's mentorship was emphatically not about spoon-feeding Harry answers or magically solving all his problems, but about fostering his independence, strengthening his innate courage, and developing his self-reliance. He understood that true growth came from facing adversity. He allowed Harry to face dangers, knowing with a heavy heart that these experiences, though terrifying and often harrowing, were absolutely essential for Harry's growth, for the forging of his character, and for the cultivation of the courage, ingenuity, and moral fortitude he would undoubtedly need for the final inescapable confrontation with Voldemort. He strategically withheld certain pieces of information, not out of malice or a desire for control, but because he believed Harry needed to discover certain profound truths for himself, or because the immense burden of the full truth would have been simply too great for a young boy to bear prematurely. Crucially, he continually taught Harry that love was the most powerful magic of all, a truth Harry would ultimately embody in his selfless acts and his willingness to sacrifice himself. This profound guiding approach was driven by Dumbledore's unwavering and selfless commitment to the true meaning of the greater good, not the twisted, ruthless version he had once shared with Grindelwald, but a purified, noble, and ultimately self-sacrificing vision where the good and survival of the entire wizarding world profoundly outweighed any individual lives, even his own. He knew, with a terrible certainty, that for Voldemort to be truly and permanently defeated, Harry had to be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. His intricate plan required Harry to deeply understand the meaning of love, of profound loss, and the absolute importance of facing death and dying for a cause greater than himself. This meant making incredibly difficult, often agonizing, and seemingly heartless choices. He knew Harry was inadvertently a Horcrux, and that this devastating secret must be kept from Harry until the crucial, final moment, a truth that would undoubtedly shadow and devastate Harry when revealed. Dumbledore often appeared enigmatic, even manipulative to Harry and to many others around him. His actions were sometimes misunderstood, his motives questioned, and his secrecy often led to frustration. But every decision he made, every secret he kept, every piece of cryptic advice he gave was meticulously calculated to lead Harry towards his terrifying destiny and to ensure Voldemort's ultimate downfall. He guided Harry through trials and tribulations, trusted him implicitly with tasks of unimaginable danger, and ceaselessly instilling in him the deep-seated belief that he was capable of truly extraordinary things. Dumbledore dedicated the last years of his life, even as he was dying, to preparing Harry, pouring all his vast wisdom, his profound experience, and his strategic genius into the boy, knowing with a quiet certainty that Harry was the wizarding world's last best hope. His role as a mentor was not just about teaching spells or magical history, but about profoundly shaping a hero, molding a young man capable of fulfilling the most perilous of prophecies, all for the ultimate salvation of the wizarding world from its darkest enemy. The Unraveling, Illness, Sacrifices, and the Final Plan. As the Second Wizarding War intensified and Lord Voldemort regained his full, terrifying power, re-emerging from the shadows to once again terrorize the wizarding world, Albus Dumbledore's health began a visible, insidious decline. This physical deterioration mirrored the escalating darkness around him, a grim reflection of the immense pressure and strain he was under. However, this decline was not simply due to his advanced age or the immense unrelenting stress of leading the fight against the most dangerous Dark Lord in history. It was directly attributable to a devastating fatal curse he incurred while relentlessly pursuing one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. In the summer leading up to Harry's 6th year at Hogwarts, Dumbledore, through his diligent research and uncanny intuition, discovered the location of Marvolo Gaunt's ring, which he correctly suspected was one of Voldemort's hidden Horcruxes. Driven by his singular, almost obsessive determination to destroy these abominations and weaken Voldemort, he failed to exercise his usual meticulous caution. Upon touching the ring, he activated a powerful ancient curse that rapidly withered his hand to a blackened, useless husk, and more insidiously began to spread throughout his entire body, steadily consuming his life force from within. He knew immediately, with the chilling certainty of a wizard of his caliber, that the curse was absolutely fatal, giving him perhaps only a year to live, a finite amount of time to complete his ultimate task. This grim diagnosis, however, did not break Dumbledore's indomitable spirit or his strategic resolve. Instead, it spurred him to finalize his intricate, audacious final plan for Voldemort's ultimate permanent defeat. He recognized this impending death not as an end, but as a unique opportunity to orchestrate events in a way that would definitively secure Harry Potter's victory, even, crucially, after his own physical demise. His weakened, dying state, ironically, became a pivotal and highly exploitable element of his cunning strategy, a weakness he could turn into a strength. It was at this critical juncture, with his life slowly draining away, that Dumbledore revealed his terminal condition to Severus Snape, his enigmatic potions master, a man of unyielding, complex loyalty perpetually disguised by a cold, perpetually sour demeanor and an outward disdain for Harry. Their relationship was, arguably, one of the wizarding world's most profound, intricate, and deeply guarded secrets. Dumbledore tasked Snape with a horrifying and pivotal sacrifice, to kill Dumbledore himself. This was not a sudden, desperate impulse born of his failing health, but a meticulously calculated, pre-planned decision stemming from multiple strategic and compassionate reasons. Firstly, Dumbledore knew that Snape's apparent act of murdering the greatest wizard of the age would irrevocably solidify Snape's position as Voldemort's most trusted Death Eater. This deep, undeniable cover was absolutely essential for Snape to remain a vital spy within the Dark Lord's inner circle, continuing to gather crucial intelligence about Voldemort's movements, his growing strength, and most importantly, the locations of the remaining Horcruxes. Snape's apparent act of ultimate betrayal would ensure he remained indispensable to Voldemort, earning him the Dark Lord's absolute trust and granting him unparalleled access. Secondly, Dumbledore wished to die on his own terms, preserving his dignity and agency in his final moments, while avoiding a slow, agonizing, undignified death from the curse that was already ravaging his body. He also sought to protect Draco Malfoy, who had been terrifyingly tasked by Voldemort himself with killing Dumbledore. Dumbledore knew, with his deep understanding of human nature, that Draco was fundamentally incapable of cold-blooded murder, and he sought, with immense compassion, to spare the boy's young, impressionable soul from such a terrible, scarring deed. By having Snape carry out the act, he simultaneously protected Draco from Voldemort's inevitable, brutal wrath for his failure and from the profound, soul-destroying act of succumbing to a truly dark path. Thirdly, and perhaps most ingeniously, Dumbledore understood the unique, sentient properties of the Elder Wand. He knew that if he were defeated in true combat by an enemy, the wand's powerful allegiance would irrevocably pass to his vanquisher, potentially making Voldemort the true master of the most powerful wand in existence. By carefully arranging his death with Snape, a pre-planned, consented act rather than a genuine defeat in a duel, Dumbledore aimed to break the chain of the Elder Wand's true mastery. If he died unvanquished by a genuine conquering enemy, the wand's immense power would effectively die with him, or at least become inert rather than serving Voldemort. This was a critical, complex sacrifice designed to ensure Voldemort could never truly control the most powerful wand in existence, ultimately paving the way for its power to be resolved after Voldemort's defeat. Throughout his final year, even as the curse visibly weakened him, Dumbledore continued his intense, perilous Horcrux hunt with Harry, leading them to the horrifying sea cave filled with inferi, where he finally retrieved what he believed to be the Locket Horcrux, though it tragically turned out to be a fake placed by Regulus Black. The harrowing ordeal in the cave further weakened him significantly, bringing him to the very brink of death. His return to Hogwarts, drained, frail, and barely clinging to life, set the stage for the planned devastating climax on the Astronomy Tower. His death on the Astronomy Tower, executed by Snape as per their secret, agonizing agreement, was a moment of profound shock and tragedy for Harry and the entire wizarding world. It appeared to be a brutal, unambiguous act of betrayal, further cementing Snape's deep cover, but also plunging Harry into the depths of despair and rage. However, this act was the ultimate calculated sacrifice in Dumbledore's grand, masterful design. His death, carefully orchestrated down to the very last detail, allowed his final, intricate plan to fully unfold, setting Harry on the crucial path to discover and destroy the remaining Horcruxes, and ultimately to defeat Voldemort once and for all. The unraveling of Dumbledore's life was not a true ending, but a strategic move, a final, brilliant gambit in the long, arduous game against the greatest dark wizard of all time, a self-sacrifice for the greater good of all. The farewell, Astronomy Tower, and the legacy of love. The night of Albus Dumbledore's death on the Astronomy Tower is indelibly etched as one of the most heartbreaking, shocking, and profoundly pivotal moments in the entire wizarding saga. Having just returned from the treacherous, soul-draining Horcrux hunt in the sea cave, severely weakened and near death from the insidious curse on Marvolo Gaunt's ring, Dumbledore arrived back at Hogwarts with Harry Potter. His strength was visibly failing rapidly, a testament to the immense physical toll the Horcrux's dark magic and the arduous, terrifying journey had taken on his already aging body. The vitality that normally flowed through him was almost entirely extinguished, leaving him frail and barely able to stand. Upon reaching the highest point of the Astronomy Tower, they found a terrified Draco Malfoy, trembling and pale, poised agonizingly to carry out Lord Voldemort's grim, unforgiving order, to kill Dumbledore Draco, however, was clearly in an agony of his own, unable to bring himself to commit the act of murder. He hesitated, his wand hand shaken uncontrollably, paralyzed by a potent mixture of fear, revulsion, and profound moral conflict. Dumbledore, though on the very precipice of death and facing his assassin, maintained his characteristic, almost serene, composure. With a calm, unwavering voice, he urged Draco to choose a different path, offering him protection, a way out of Voldemort's grasp, and genuine help. Even in his very final moments, Dumbledore demonstrated his profound empathy, his deep understanding of human weakness, and his unwavering belief in the possibility of redemption, trying desperately to save Draco's soul from the indelible stain of murder even as his own life ebbed away. It was at this critical, agonizing juncture that the Death Eaters, having successfully infiltrated the castle under the cover of chaos, burst onto the tower, their menacing figures silhouetted against the night sky. Among them was Severus Snape, his face a mask of cold resolve. The scene that unfolded next was meticulously prearranged by Dumbledore, the ultimate horrifying act in his grand sacrificial plan. With a quiet yet firm voice, Dumbledore pleaded, "Severus, please!" It was not a plea for his life, for he had already accepted his fate. Rather, it was a final, somber command, a confirmation of their secret, agonizing agreement, the signal for Snape to fulfill his terrible task. Snape, with a face devoid of outward emotion, but undoubtedly bearing immense internal conflict and sorrow, raised his wand and uttered the dreaded, unspeakable Avada Kedavra curse. Dumbledore was thrown from the tower by the force of the spell, falling silently and majestically through the night air, his body illuminated briefly before disappearing into the darkness below. His death, witnessed by a horrified and helpless Harry Potter from beneath the invisibility cloak, appeared to be a brutal, unequivocal act of betrayal, a shocking and incomprehensible end to the life of the greatest wizard of his age. For Harry, and for the entire wizarding world, the apparent treachery of Severus Snape was an unbearable blow, transforming a figure of unwavering trust and loyalty into a despised, reviled traitor, deepening the sense of despair that Voldemort's return had already sown. The immediate aftermath of Dumbledore's fall was marked by profound grief, widespread confusion, and a crushing sense of loss. His body was reverently laid to rest in a simple yet dignified white marble tomb on the very grounds of Hogwarts, a singular honor, making him the only headmaster to be permanently interred within the school's sacred confines. His funeral was attended by hundreds, perhaps thousands, a testament to the immense respect, admiration, and love he had commanded across all magical communities. Students, teachers, ministry officials, various magical creatures, and even centaurs gathered in solemn silence to mourn the loss of their leader, their mentor, their protector, and their guiding light. However, Dumbledore's death was not an ending in the traditional final sense. It was, rather, the ultimate calculated sacrifice that propelled his intricate plan into its critical final phase. His deliberate, premeditated death, orchestrated with such precision, ensured that the Elder Wand's true mastery did not pass to Voldemort, because Snape was acting entirely under Dumbledore's explicit instructions, and Dumbledore was already succumbing to a fatal curse. The wand's allegiance was not truly won by conquest in a duel. This cunning, final maneuver was central to ensuring Voldemort could never truly master the most powerful wand in existence, preventing him from wielding its full destructive potential effectively. More profoundly, Dumbledore's death solidified his true everlasting legacy of love. He died to protect Harry, to give him the crucial tools, the vital knowledge, and the unwavering conviction necessary to finally defeat Voldemort and to ensure the ultimate triumph of good over evil. His final act was an embodiment of his lifelong belief in the transcendent power of love, of selfless sacrifice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. He passed the torch to Harry, entrusting him with the immense, terrifying responsibility of discovering and destroying the remaining Horcruxes and completing the monumental task Dumbledore himself had begun. His farewell was a moment of profound sorrow, a loss that shook the wizarding world, but it was also a testament to incredible strategic brilliance and unparalleled selflessness, setting the stage irrevocably for the final confrontation that would, at last, secure the wizarding world's future and bring about true peace. Beyond the Veil, Dumbledore's enduring influence, and the Epilogue. Even in death, Albus Dumbledore's influence on the wizarding world, and particularly on Harry Potter, proved to be profoundly enduring and undeniably transformative. His carefully laid plans, meticulously crafted and honed over decades of vigilance and foresight, continued to unfold with a precise, almost preordained momentum, relentlessly guiding Harry toward the ultimate and definitive defeat of Lord Voldemort. Dumbledore had orchestrated his own death as a strategic maneuver, but he certainly had not planned his disappearance from the grand narrative. His vast wisdom, his strategic brilliance, and his quiet guidance, though no longer expressed through direct physical interaction, remained a powerful, almost palpable force, shaping the destiny of the wizarding world from beyond the veil. Perhaps the most prominent and tangible manifestation of his continued influence was through his portrait in the Headmaster's office at Hogwarts. Unlike ordinary, largely static portraits that merely mimic the deceased, Dumbledore's portrait was imbued with a unique, extraordinary level of awareness, sentience, and profound understanding, allowing him to offer counsel, subtle warnings, and vital support to his successors. This was particularly true for Severus Snape during his brief, incredibly crucial tenure as Headmaster, a period of immense danger where Snape needed Dumbledore's guidance more than ever. Later, the portrait continued to subtly advise and encourage Harry Potter himself, providing crucial insights and comfort when Harry needed it most. Through his magically enhanced portrait, Dumbledore could still subtly manipulate events, clarify his intricate intentions, and offer encouragement, ensuring that his final complex and high-stakes plan was understood and executed correctly, even in his absence. This was not merely a painted canvas, it was a living echo of his strategic genius, a silent, all-knowing guardian, constantly vigilant over the fate of Hogwarts and the wider magical world. Dumbledore's final, profoundly pivotal interaction with Harry occurred in the ethereal, liminal space of what appeared to be a pristine King's Cross station, a symbolic representation of the afterlife, or a tranquil state between life and death. This meeting took place following Harry's harrowing, self-sacrificial encounter with Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, where Harry had chosen to face death. Here, in this dreamlike, serene setting, Dumbledore revealed the full extent and intricate detail of his complex plan, stripping away years of secrecy and misdirection. He meticulously explained the confusing nuances of the Elder Wand's allegiance, clarifying why it had never truly served Voldemort. He unveiled the absolute truth of Snape's true loyalty, vindicating the man who had suffered so much for their cause. Most importantly, he offered Harry profound, life-altering insights into the nature of life, death, choice, and the immense power of love. He explained, with gentle honesty, why Harry, as an inadvertent Horcrux, had to face Voldemort's killing curse, and the powerful paradoxical role of love and selfless sacrifice in achieving true, lasting victory. This conversation was a moment of profound clarity, emotional release, and ultimate understanding for Harry, providing him with the final crucial pieces of the puzzle and the deep emotional resolve needed to confront Voldemort one last time, unburdened by confusion. It was Dumbledore's ultimate act of mentorship, a final, essential advice session delivered from beyond the veil, cementing his wisdom in Harry's mind. His enduring influence extended far beyond Harry's personal journey. Dumbledore's legacy became an unshakable cornerstone of hope and resistance against the lingering dark arts and any future threats. His fundamental teachings, his unwavering belief in the transformative power of love, the necessity of courage in the face of adversity, and the moral imperative of standing up for what is right even when it is difficult, continued to inspire and guide generations of witches and wizards. His profound wisdom was disseminated through the stories told about him, the invaluable lessons learned from his extraordinary life, and the deep moral values he had instilled in those around him, especially his students and the members of the Order of the Phoenix. He became a timeless symbol of defiance against tyranny, a steadfast beacon of hope in the darkest of times, and a powerful reminder that light would always prevail over darkness. In the epilogue of the Wizarding World, set nearly 2 decades after Voldemort's final cataclysmic defeat, Dumbledore's presence is still felt profoundly, subtly interwoven into the fabric of the new, peaceful era. Harry Potter, now an adult, a successful aura, and a loving father, names his second son Albus Severus Potter. This poignant act serves as a powerful, heartfelt tribute to the two men who sacrificed so much for him and for the Wizarding World. This naming signifies the immense, lasting impact Dumbledore had on Harry's life, honoring his legacy of profound wisdom, quiet bravery, and the complex, often agonizing choices he made for the greater good of all. Dumbledore's story, then, is not just one of unparalleled magical prowess or strategic brilliance. It is a profound narrative of personal redemption, of overcoming deeply ingrained arrogance and ambition, of conquering personal demons, and of ultimately dedicating one's entire life to the betterment of others. He learned painstakingly from his mistakes, grew profoundly from his immense personal tragedies and the deep guilt he carried, and ultimately became a figure whose life was a testament to the enduring power of love, the capacity for forgiveness, and the unwavering pursuit of true justice and peace. His story, with all its complexities, its moral ambiguities, and its profound sacrifices, continues to resonate deeply within the Wizarding World and beyond, reminding us that even the most powerful individuals are shaped by their past, and that true strength lies not just in magical ability, but in the unwavering commitment to a cause greater than oneself, forever impacting the destiny of the magical world.